Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Splunk Cloud SecOps Series Splunk Security Essentials webinar. Hopefully that's the webinar you've been expecting. My name is Ben Marrable. I'm a security strategist here at Somerford Associates, and I'll be taking you through Security Essentials and Splunk Security Essentials and why it's been created. It's been around for a couple of years now, but it provides a really good level up to get you into security using Splunk. So hopefully I can demonstrate many of the features. I probably won't be able to show you everything in here, but I'll do a good idea of what it really is and why it's really useful for every single organization using Splunk and looking to be a bit more secure. So welcome to the front page of Splunk Security Essentials. Most situations you would normally kind of skip over this, but I do want to use it as a kind of a high-level picture of what Security Essentials really offers. So there's four sort of directions that it can kind of go in. We can find content. So Splunk Security Essentials provides a good 700, 800, 900 odd security detections, written searches for you to use to detect security events happening in your organization. It can provide you the ability to learn Splunk, learn security. It has ways of bringing in data, so it can help you deploy it. It can help you leverage the MITRE ATT&CK framework or the cyber kill chain if you want to use these frameworks as ways to deploy your security operations. And it can also measure the effectiveness of your data sources, how valuable those are compared to the security use cases that you're using. And document all of your deployed content. So I'll cover areas within all of these different spaces. But one thing that you can do is these are actually clickable. And if you click on one of these, then it will take you to a sort of a further down. So we can find content, we can look for our advanced detection content and certain areas, and it will take us into a new position there. But what I want to do first is just take the big picture. So a lot of organizations come to us and they say, I want to do Splunk for security. I don't really know where to start. Is there anything that can help me on the journey? And Splunk have provided what they call the security data journey to cover this sort of situation, right? And it's all about being able to kind of have the next steps. And it doesn't really matter if you're right at the bottom and you're beginning this journey, or if you're already a sort of halfway along. That can still be a challenge to figure out, how do I get to the next step? How do I enhance my security posture, and how do I, increase my number of controls? What sort of different direction can I go with my security and my compliance as well, and all of those sort of things along the way. So what it is 6 different stages, and there is on the internet, you'll be able to download this, a big PDF covering all of this security data journey and everything that you need to see, or everything that you want to go, and it goes into each stage in a lot more detail. But that piece is put and brought into Splunk Security Essentials here for easier consuming it a lot easier, and being right in your face and so forth, so we can kind of get to it a lot better. Things that are really important here is really the milestones and the challenges of each stage. And as you click on a new stage, everything you can see changes. And also the data sources across the bottom, right? So you've got what you expect to be getting to at this stage, what challenges you might see at this stage, and all the different data sources that will be able to add to the value and the data that you need to get to that stage. Okay, so if we go back to the beginning, your basic security data sources along here, so network security, endpoint security, authentication security, web activity security, all of those sort of data sources that will power that particular pieces. And then you can see also on the right hand side the amount of use cases, and as you get towards the top, you can see the use cases kind of increasing, and what you're trying to do at each of these different stages as you go through it. And this is a bigger picture. This is your SIM, this is your SOAR, this is your UBA, this is the whole kind of piece. This is your threat technology, threat activity, threat intelligence. All of it can kind of be combined into the stages of your security, right? So this Splunk Security Essentials is not necessarily defined just for what you can do in Splunk, but it can also be used to measure things outside of Splunk for the whole of the SOC, so other tools and other things that you might be using. And I'll go into a bit more detail on that a little bit later. So that was a little introduction on security data journey. It's a really useful way of just kind of picturing where you are And this is mapped into the security content. And this is why it's really important to just understand what the security data journey is, and why it's being used. And hopefully you might be able to see where you are, at which stage you're at, and therefore what you need to do to get to the next stage, right? And as I say all the time when I talk about this, going to sort of stage 5 or 6, really without doing 1 and 2, will just skip a whole host of easy routes in for security attackers, right? It's for the threat actors to be able to get into your environment. If you don't cover the basic sort of things, it's really about building on the basics, and to get to the top level, you really do need to do it in a pyramid kind of structure. So if you look at the actual content, so this is version 3.4.0. This has 888 different detections in the entire system. That's a lot. That's a lot of different use cases to enable. And so it's really, really important to be able to filter down and create a menu of the best and the most appropriate for your organization based on the areas that you're interested in, the data that you have, right? Because there is going to be stuff with data sources that maybe you just don't have in your environment. Not everyone has an IDS, not everyone has a host-based IDS, not everyone has web proxies even, right? So depending on the organization, you may or may not have certain data sources, and therefore certain use cases won't be relevant to you. Another good one is whether it's featured or not featured. So featured really means it's wider across, it's used more commonly across the globe. It's more of a regular sort of detection. So that's really useful. But also, as I'll show you later, you can also look at it from a MITRE tactics or techniques perspective. So if you've got detections in a certain technique, and maybe even just across the whole tactic, you might feel that that actually covers me from a security perspective, and I don't need to run about 10 or 15 or 20 of them that sit in the same space, because really they're all going to detect the same thing at the same time, sort of thing. So there is a little bit of overlap. So it's important to kind of get a picture and really be able to narrow this down. So as you can see below, they're all presented to you in little boxes, but across the top, there are a number of ways of filtering this. So I mentioned the journey before, so we can look at different stages throughout the journey. We can look at a different categories. So whether it's account compromise, adversary tactics, endpoint compromise, maybe it's GDPR related things that we're interested in. So I can say whether, there's compliance in here as well. Maybe it's related to a particular story. So if you're thinking about something like ransomware, or you're thinking about AWS crypto mining or something, you can have that in there as well as a way of filtering down, or again, by a data source. And there are a number of other filters that you can leverage as well. You can just click on this edit button and you can see a lot of different ways of filtering the information, right? So it's really about the direction you want to use, because if you looked at all 888, you would go, I want all of them. But really that's not necessarily achievable. What you really want to do is kind of prioritize the most important ones that are of interest to you. And as you go through them, what you can do is you can implement them, mark them as being either implemented or bookmark them. And as you bookmark them, if I just bookmark this one, and maybe I'll go, okay, I actually want this one as well. I'll just click that and bookmark that one. And I'll show you where that comes in. But if you ever want to explore one a little bit into more detail, first, I suppose we should say that the name of it is obviously there. The brief description is below it. It's got a featured, so this is highly recommended by Splunk Surge team, essentially, Splunk Security SMEs. It's included, which means it runs without enterprise security or UBA or any of the other premium technologies that Splunk have in an offering. So the green is really important if you only have Splunk Enterprise or Splunk Cloud. That means we can run it without those additional frameworks. And then the purple is really the MITRE attack techniques that are relevant to this particular example. And you may see some others as we go down, including the SOS controls and maybe also these orange ones also from SIS, I believe. But there are different areas throughout it. And you can see some of these ones that have got a little enterprise security piece in there, potentially might require enterprise security, that one doesn't, but so forth. So if I click on one of these, let's click on access to, let's click on increase in pages printed. Let's go with that one, for example. So I click on that and it's going to take me to the actual information around that particular search, right? So reload page, the basic search page essentially, and it will show me, in this case, the detect spikes page. So it's going to give me the information in the top. So it's going to give me the details around the use case, what area it's in. It's inside a threat. Data exfiltration. So this is people printing all the data out essentially. Security impact. So, it might seem old fashioned, but information about what it is and what it's doing. The amount of alerts that you would expect to see. So is this going to create a lot of alerts? And the SPL difficulty, right? So, if you want to use this to learn Splunk, going and having a look at the most difficult SPLs can really help you kind of create some interesting searches as you go through it. On the right, you can see whether it's bookmarked, which I'll go to in a moment. You can see if the data is available for it. You can see what journey it's from and the MITRE attack techniques and tactics, the kill chain phases, and also the data sources that are of relevance to it, which is really, really nice. And in the top right, you might miss this if I don't point it out, is a way of viewing it against either demo data, so data that comes with Security Essentials. So Security Essentials comes with a number of different lookups essentially of data that's pre-written to show you results. With the live data, so here you may need to specify the index that the data sits inside, but generally it will work looking for known source types such as Microsoft printing data source types. Or accelerated with data models. So if we've got a data model that's relevant to it, we can also use the accelerated data models that are relevant. So if you've got enterprise security, you will know about the SIEM normalization and the common information model. So you can also run the search against the data models as well. And as you scroll down, you can actually see the search, and you can kind of essentially look at how we would detect spikes, and you can go into the line-by-line search. So when you want to really learn it, what you can kind of do is you can see, okay, well, we grab the information, we stick it into a bucket, so we span it into a day. So we're going to count by how much happens per day. And then we can do some evaluations to try and figure out how much data you normally do over a time period. And then we've got lower bounds, upper bounds. So we are looking at outliers to what a user normally does, right? So if you normally print 10 pages a day and then suddenly you've printed 1,000 pages, then that is obviously a significant increase and you probably want to be detected about it. If you normally print about 1 or 2 pages a day and you suddenly go to 4, maybe that's not so much of an interest. Or maybe you print 1,000 pages a day, right? This is probably a better example. And you go to 1,000 or you go to 2,000 on one day. That's not actually that much of an standard deviation. Might be quite great because you're printing so many. 1,000-point increase isn't necessarily very interesting, but if you print 1 a day and then suddenly get to 100, that could be more interesting, right? So that's really where we go with behavior-based searches. What's the normal behavior for this user? And in this case, how many pages do they normally print on a day? And then, we can calculate that. So if you really want to learn those sort of detections of spikes, that can be really, really, really useful as a way of determining that. For each of them, we also have how to implement any known false positives, how to respond, which is really useful, right? Sometimes this is very basic, right? Okay, well, you probably want to disable their printing capability, something like that. But in some situations where it's really complex, and especially when you're getting data use cases that are very much hitting the news and you haven't really got an idea of what to do if you see log4j or something like that how to respond can be really helpful to give you a kind of a pointer. Okay, well, I've found it, what do I do about it? And that sort of thing, even if it's really basic. And then you've got some other things about how to actually use it as well. So every single one of those 888 in this particular version has that detail around what that use case is, which can be really, really, really useful in how we can leverage it. So number 1, security content. This is the first use case for Splunk Security Essentials. Provide all this content, okay? And from the security content page, which you can find under security content, this is where you see that menu of different options that are available to you, and you can go into it. And I clicked on a very different page there and gone into enterprise security by mistake. You can kind of see all the different content that's relevant to it. Okay, so just get rid of that. Right, so we've got all of our content, if it loads properly. We can see all the content in there. We've been able to filter it. Now, what we really want to do is start thinking about how we can measure what our data is doing, or how what data we have available, right? So one of the drop downs was the ability to have that we do have data that's relevant to it. So if I click on this filter, data availability should be around somewhere. Here it is. So if I add that to my filter, I should have a drop down that says my data is true or good or bad, right? So if I go to good, then it will filter based on whether I have the data or not. Okay, so how does it know whether you've got the data? Well, there is a data inventory page, and I highly recommend that you start leveraging this if you do want to use Splunk Security Essentials, because this is the kind of hidden stuff, right? Most people understand that it's got a lot of content, and it's a library of content, but it has a lot of more features inside it, and this is one of the starting features that I would suggest that you leverage, right? So under data inventory, you can essentially out of the box run a scan, and if you run a scan, you'll get this running in the background, and it will run a load of searches to try and find out what's in your data or what data sources you have in the background. As it does that, what it will do is it will come back and say, okay, right, I've had a search, I found your Active Directory sign-in data for Azure, and this, you know, we've got successful authentications, and you may need to add additional products to say you've got authentication data for it, and so forth. And this is the really key piece, right? And this is how you can then start thinking, okay, well, I've got use cases, I've got data, where's my mapping between my data and my use cases, you know? And this is the first point of call for that. And essentially all it is a flag of, sorry, not that. So if I go into update, so it's just a flag of a search. So it's searching for a particular location, that source type. You'll then select a vendor product configuration, and you can define the coverage so you know how much coverage you've got across the whole state, and then that's pretty much it, right? And a bit of a description about what it is. So it's very, very straightforward. It's just telling it where your data is. But what you can do with this is a couple of things, right? You can SIM analyze it. So you've got an ability to do SIM availability. So if you go to here, security operations SIM compliance check, you can validate whether your data is SIM compliant or not. And it will do it based on the data that you've specified as authentication or DNS or email and so forth and so forth and so forth. And as you click on through these, then it will tell you whether you've got that data or not. And if you don't have any data for this particular thing, you can click no data present, and it will go and mark it as a cross. And essentially that will mean that you then don't see that information in the viewpoints, right? It will say, okay, I don't have that data. That's fine. It's just the situation. So maybe these use cases aren't relevant to me and so forth, right? So that data inventory, very nice. You can click on the automated introspection, and once you've done that, you can click on view products, and that will do your mapping for you between your bookmarks and your inventory. Okay, so that's one point. And then the second point is the availability of the data, right? So the content that you're running against it. Okay, so if I just refresh this, because I added the bookmarks when I went to the security content pages. I have a number of use cases that I've flagged as being use cases that I've got interest in. Quite a lot now. So I've bookmarked 101, and I've got 11 successfully implemented. And essentially what it's done is it's taken all of these bookmarks across here and it's flagged them all as bookmarks, right? So as I develop my use cases, and the development of a use case is a iterative process of going through it and saying, right, do I have the data? Okay, can I deploy it? Does it need tuning? Is it ready for deployment? Is it being implemented, right? Am I testing it? What's my test data? And then if I run data at another time, does that pick it up and so forth, right? So building your use case, you know, isn't always just turning the search on. It has to be that whole kind of thing. And then you want to really be doing a 3-month or 6-month interval where you test it again. If the data changes, if the search has been disabled or something really strange has happened in Splunk, you need to make sure that your detections are running as they should be, and there's nothing that has altered and flagged that. So you do want to implement some regular testing of these use cases, but ultimately you can use this as a tracking process of being able to track where you are and where you're going to. One thing that you can also do is if you have content already in place, you can click on a content introspection, and once that's run, it will show you a page like this, which will show you all the different searches that are running on your environment, and you can say, okay, yes, that is that particular Security Essentials content name. So I can do the mapping. That will mean, yeah, great, I get all of, if I click that acceptance, when I track this, it will have all the information around what that use case is, what MITRE kill chain phase it's in, and all that sort of thing. And also some might not be a detection. You might want to go, no, it's not a detection, or some you might want to create a new one for. And if you're creating a new one, whether it's in Splunk or outside of Splunk, you can say what stage it's at, right? So you've got all these different stages. And then you can also see the data sources that are relevant, which is good for measuring your data sources versus it. And you can also add in particular domains and kill chain phases and the MITRE tactics that are involved in the situation. So if we go like that, and also the MITRE technique, and maybe we can be very specific about a sub technique, we can add that in, so forth, and that requires a few more info, but I won't go into all the details. And if I add that in, it will create a custom content for us. And when we get a custom content, you'll be able to see that under custom content here, but it will be flagged in here and it will be marked as the status that it is at, which is really, really good. Okay, so we've got all that kind of tracking for it. We can export it if we need to and take it to a different system, whatever we need to do, but we've got that kind of end-to-end perspective of tracking our use cases along the journey. Now, we've got use cases, we've got data, we really want to map the two together. Okay, I want to provide some reports to upper management. I want to measure what our use case effectiveness is and how our security is actually relevant and how much, you know, we've got to spend on Splunk, and we're spending quite a lot of money on Splunk and Splunk security. What is it that we're actually providing? Well, the MITRE Attack Analytics Advisor can really show you some very good value. So this is showing me on a content that's available in total, and it's color coding against the MITRE Attack matrix, right? So this is the MITRE Attack matrix presented as a dashboard that you can print, or you can show to upper management and say, look, okay, if I want to color from total, or I can color from what's actually active or what's available, you know, so actively installed. So that's based on the bookmarks, and it's saying it's successfully implemented, versus available, it's got data, you're interested in it, and so forth, or just on bookmarks. You can see all the different colors, so you can see all the different pictures. So maybe you've got an area that you don't have any information for, you want to bring something in or a tool in to cover that particular piece, but you don't have anything for resource development, you know, or some other different area, and you can go, okay, well, my security investment needs to be in this area. So that's really good at directing the security program of the business, because the MITRE matrix is very well established and you can use it as a way of doing that. So that's a really nice piece of Security Essentials that a lot of people don't necessarily know is there, but I wanted to highlight it for you all. Once you've got that kind of perspective, so what we've done is we've got content, we've got based on the journey, we've got inventory of data, we've got bookmark content of data, so we're marking all of that together so we can produce outputs. And one I will actually show you is this view product. So this is I've got content and I've got data sources. What's my content data sources mapping look like? So now that I've got all of that kind of mapped out, so I can say, okay, all this data is really, really useful because it's providing X number of use cases to do that. Okay, so it's simply a case of this product is, you know, mapping to this particular use case and so forth. They're all a bit one-to-one at the moment, but you can see that that's how you would then show what the value is of all your data sources that you've got in the system. Okay. Which can be really useful as well for upper management, or also for direction of where you want to get new data or a new investment into Splunk. Now, as well as all of that, Splunk Security Essentials actually comes with essential security dashboards. Okay, it's not just content for you to enable as you see fit, or a menu and set as such. There is also a way of going from a data source check. So this is a quick check to say, have I got data for this particular use case area, or this particular content? And if I do, then I can create certain dashboards for it. And if I click on this particular thing, essential network security, for example, you can see all the different types of dashboards or searches that are relevant to this particular thing. Rare internal source IPs I could add to my dashboard, and so forth and so forth. And if I've got that data, then it will work. If not, I don't necessarily have that data yet. I mean, it's still scanning the background, the data that I do have in here. But once I've enabled that, then I actually have 3 essential dashboards that show me basic security, right? So if you want to just get from, you could do all of this in a day. If you've got Splunk already, you can turn on Splunk Security Essentials, you could get the data journey started, you could scan for all the data, you could add a few bookmarks, and then you could produce these essential account security dashboards, and maybe use these as kind of starting point, right? The users that are failing authentication, the time of these particular things, persistently failing authentication, what's going on, all of that sort of thing from an essential account security. You've also got essential host security and essential network security. So it's very basic in this point. And you would want to then take that and leverage it to a further extent. But it gives you some very, very sort of start points. Okay, so there is a lot more that you can get out of these dashboards. As I showed you on the previous page, I've only checked, if I looked at essential hosts, I've only checked these two. If I had extra data sources, I could add in some extra ones here, but at the moment it hasn't found those data sources in my data inventory. So that's where data inventory is really useful as a kind of an end-to-end perspective. Okay, so essential dashboards, very, very simple. Splunk Security Essentials. One thing I haven't mentioned is it's completely free. Okay, so it's not a premium application for Splunk. Once you've got Splunk, or even if you've got, a Splunk free license, you could technically leverage this. Okay, you can just download it from splunkbase.com and get hold of it and start using it and start thinking about different use cases that are going to be relevant to your organization, playing with it on your laptop, that sort of thing. But it can be really, really, really good as a way of ramping up security very, very quickly, because it's got all of that content, because it's got all these dashboards, because you can measure. And if I come back to the homepage, because you can find content, because you can learn Splunk, because you can help deploy Splunk, and because you can measure the effectiveness of your SOC. Those 4 key things are really why this application is really, really, really useful for every single organization. Now, that pretty much wraps up for this particular webinar. It's a nice, short and sweet one, less than 30 minutes. So hopefully you can enjoy another 30 minutes back. If you have any questions, put them in the chat window and I'll answer them. Just to point out, Somerford have, a full series on this security SecOps, cloud SecOps series. I'll be doing some more in the future about ES and all the different things that come on top of it. Splunk Security Cloud, which is a new set of features in Splunk, and all that sort of great stuff going from one end to the other. But you can find that all out on our website, somerfordassociates.com/events/Splunk webinars, or just go to somerfordassociates.com/events. You'll be able to find that from there moving forward. And if you want to talk to me one-on-one, a little bit more detail around Splunk Security Essentials or what you're trying to do on a different, just reach out to our team. We'll be able to set something out to go into a bit more info. Thank you all.